Now, this trade war started by US President Donald Trump with his tariff barrage targeting almost all nations has led to a rebalancing of trade already. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle and is joining me from Berlin. Good afternoon to you, Lars. What are we seeing or really looking at in terms of the latest trade numbers?
Thanks for having me. Well, it's interesting how fast things are changing, especially regarding trade between China and the US. While Trump in the US has obviously levied import fees on all sorts of goods from almost all countries around the globe, he has hit no one harder than China. The US, of course, has a huge trade imbalance with China, and that was at the root of Trump's recent action, including tariffs recently up to 145% against China. Now, nobody at this point knows how the relationship between those two countries will end up looking after current talks. Rare earth exports are playing into this at least as much as trade deficits and tariffs. But looking at the very latest numbers, we are seeing that China's exports to the US fell 35% in May compared to a year earlier. China exported $28.8 billion worth of goods to the US in May compared to $44 billion a year earlier. Imports dropped as well by a much smaller amount, but that's a different story, as that has a lot more to do with economic challenges within China and not so much actually with trade. So back to the trade story, and another interesting figure pops out. China's exports in general actually grew by almost 5%.
And Lars, where is that growth coming from, though? Who's really making up for the negative trend with the US?
It's Europe, as many had been expecting, and it is Germany indeed to a very large part. China's exports to the European Union are actually up 12% compared to a year ago, and exports to Germany went up over 21%. So we're seeing that the trade war between the US and China does indeed have major effects here on our shores, and specific in our country, in Germany. It was in fact what a lot of economists had been fearing. Chinese firms, of course, have all these products that they had already produced. And since most of them can't be sold to the US right now at economically interesting prices, they have to go somewhere else. And with the Chinese domestic demand down, like I just mentioned, there really aren't a lot of customers left. Besides Germany and other EU countries, destinations would be some of the Southeast Asian neighbors. There's especially Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia. And that's where we are right now.
And Lars, how indeed are companies reacting to these trade difficulties?
They're mostly struggling. Many see the uptick in Chinese products as a problem, of course, but there's also another interesting story developing. Companies are trying to insulate themselves a bit better against the ups and downs of trade that we have come to get used to over the past few years. And that's not only because of confusing politics in Washington, D.C. Let me tell you what Lidl is doing. That's Germany's largest retailer with 12,000 stores and annual revenues of 175 billion euros. They are massively investing in their own container ship fleet. They've just ordered 5 large tankers with a Chinese shipyard. The job is worth 600 million euros. And they're doing it specifically to be less dependent on the ups and downs of global trade. Now, think about a few years back how COVID disrupted shipping, and then it was the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. There's regularly delays in shipping, a shortage of containers, and all that trouble is actually what Lidl wants to get out of. And even there's another benefit, and not only can they ensure that they get their Asian imports into stores on time, but they can even service competitors. So that's now a step we have never seen before, how companies are switching gear, like a retailer becoming its own shipping provider, all because the decades-old mechanics of trade are not necessarily reliable anymore.
Right, Lars. Clearly a huge challenge still to surmount for the world to just rebalance things out so that there can be all-round progress. Thanks for joining us from Berlin.